Welcome back to the Feature Crew, everybody. It's been about a week since O3 Pro came out, and if you saw our video, we were struggling to figure out where O3 Pro is really worth the long compute reasoning wait time. While it is, in some cases, a very strong model, we want to figure out what its best uses are. So today, we're going to put it head-to-head with O3 and try to figure out on some hard tests where you actually want to use the longer and higher reasoning capability of O3 Pro. All right, folks. So we're loaded up with O3 Pro, and we've got this long prompt typed out. Our first test is going to be familiar from our Gemini versus Claude video, and we're going to do the dungeon crawler generation test. And so we're asking for sort of a full game in a node project, trying to depart from our single HTML file tests, in which it was hard to tell the difference between O3 Pro and O3. We're going to do a larger request here for basically a fully featured procedurally generated dungeon crawler game. We're looking for like enemies and AI and dungeon generations, and we want a gameplay loop. So we really want sort of a full playable thing here. We'll send it off with O3 Pro first. We'll let it do its potentially 15 minutes of reasoning, and while it's doing that, we'll run the test on O3 and get a baseline. It's slowly ticking. While that is working, we'll send the same prompt to O3. Hopefully get a bit quicker of a response. So we just reran it really quickly. We wanted to include some example files from the Vibe Shell. If you've seen previous videos, it's just a super simple implementation of the Vue.js Rapier libraries that we're asking it to use to show it the correct syntax. Often using the most up-to-date syntax for libraries is a stumbling block for these LLMs. So we're including this as a sort of grounding element. There we go. Alrighty, so we've loaded up O3's result, and oh no!
Okay.
These are big.
I'm a little confused as to what's going on.
enemies.
So
Game over. Okay.
Immediately done.
game over.
So I guess this looks a lot better. There we go.
This looks better. Okay. Can I pick stuff up?
Can you
I
pick
pick
that up?
this
What
up?
give you score?
Still
All
100
right.
health though.
Still at 100 health. I mean,
There is a
Doing a
UI.
good job. They're on top of you.
okay. We've got a structure here. It's able to generate some sort of dungeon. It's clearly dropping these collectible things on the ground and is including enemies with the AI. Now, currently, I have no way of attacking the enemies. I have no way of picking up the items. And the enemies have no way of damaging me, even though it seems like they think they are. But at least, it got something to run. It's not quite as impressive as Gemini or Claude's first attempt at the same prompt if you go and check that video out. But it gives us a baseline here for us to see if O3 Pro was able to do something more coherent and more playable.
Yeah, they got kind of the guy that stands next to you at the urinal energy about him. They're not hurting you, but it's real close.
Should we check O3 Pro now?
O3 Pro is back. So it reasoned for almost 14 minutes. It does seem to be a longer, more detailed project than we had from O3 regular. Without diving too much into the code, I'm just going to try to get it running and we'll see what it was able to put together. So we tried to get O3 Pro's response loaded up here. The first thing I noticed is it was failing to npm install. O3 Pro had sort of made up new package versions, even though I gave it a working example and a working package.json. So I literally copied the package.json over from O3's response, which was able to successfully install. And then now we're hitting this issue where there's some undefined variable. I mean, I think this is an interesting result, guys.
Yeah, no.
We saw O3 be able to pull it together, get something working. Obviously wasn't perfect. O3 Pro, on the other hand, after reasoning for 4 times as long, same or similar model, we don't know exactly what's going on under the hood, it got confused. So this is like flying in the face a little bit of this inference time scaling thing, and I'm wondering what happened, right? Now, we've seen, yeah.
It does make the case that some of those rumors that if O3 Pro was going to be part of a GPT-5 package, they tested it, didn't get the results they wanted, put it out as a separate model. No idea if that's true, but if I was seeing results like this, I would certainly not want to brand it as our new flagship model. I might release it just to get some learnings about when the longer inference time helped, but yeah, it's not great.
We'll tee it up to give it another chance. It's frankly disappointing that, to Jacob's point, you would assume that it doesn't trip up here. And given you have to wait 15 minutes each time, even if it's going to be great, like your confidence is shot every time this happens. And at least on the coding class of problems, we've really struggled with O3 Pro, which is surprising.
We're just giving it the error from console and a prompt to get that fixed. And while it's off doing its, we're expecting another sort of 15 minutes of reasoning. We'll start working with O3 and see if we can't demonstrate this point we're trying to make, that we're able to maybe even get further with O3 before O3 Pro is even able to make something work. This is off. We'll let it think, and we'll switch back over to O3. We have a feedback prompt ready for O3 asking for, first off, combat. We want to be able to fight the enemies. That means we need to be able to deal damage to the enemies, kill the enemies. The enemies need to be able to deal damage to us. Then we notice that issue with collisions on the walls, so we want to sort of bring the collisions with the walls that we have on the floor. And then also items should be able to be picked up. Those are the various sort of collectibles scattered throughout the level. We can't pick them up right now, so we want to be able to do that. And I'm also going to put in a little piece that when we pick up items that the score should be updated. And O3 is working. We got O3's response back. It's funny, Chris. The reason we were able to, when I was first testing, we had spawned in, a small room. The way it generates this world, if it's not part of the main dungeon, it's just a bunch of small little rooms instead of being solid wall. And so we had spawned in this before, and it wasn't a problem because there were no wall collisions, so we were able to walk into the dungeon through the walls. Now we're stuck in the sort of, wall
waiting room
situation. But we were able to see that when we happened to spawn in the waiting room with an enemy, that we were able to kill it, it was able to damage us, and that it is keeping a count of levels, I guess. That's a little confusing as to maybe my level went up when I killed an enemy. I'm not sure if spawning in the main dungeon is even in the cards for this version of the project. So I will give it some feedback to see if it's able to get us to spawn in the actual dungeon. As we are waiting for the iteration from O3, this is our second iteration in O3 during this second O3 Pro request, and O3 Pro is still thinking away. And so this is sort of underscoring this point of O3 might not do as heavy thinking per request, but we are able to validate what it does and see it's already come back, as we were just talking about this. And once it finishes here, we'll be able to test it and see the second round of feedback, how did it do? The whole while on our O3 Pro project, it's just, we're sitting and doing nothing and waiting for the model to think, and we're kind of stuck with whatever it's going to come back with.
Whoa, hey, look at that.
Nice. I think you're going to different levels. As you're killing them, I think you're leveling up. You're now on level 3.
Yep.
Yeah, I think basically what's happening is as your score increases, you're hitting different levels.
I see. Can I pick this up?
Up?
So, good to see it respond to most of our feedback. We do have a response from O3 Pro. As a reminder, O3 Pro the first time was not able to get anything to run. It had an error in the console. It required some manual package adjustment from me. We're hoping that the main issues have been addressed in this response from O3 Pro. Thank God. Deja vu, man.
Yeah, it's
so we're arguably, I don't even know arguably, we are worse than O3's initial result.
We are. I mean, look at these. Oh, God.
And they're not even cubes, they're just squares.
They are billboards. They're also scary. There's something about, that many of them, and that as they turn, look, that's kind of scary.
It's kind of scary.
Okay,
but the green bar, there's no UI. It looks like everything's kind of weirdly flipped and just not. Yeah.
It looks super similar to the first pass from O3. Now, the first pass from O3 Pro was broken and wouldn't run. The first pass from O3 was better than this, but had similar issues. Mm-hmm. Not all the same issues. It had the collision issues. It had the inability to damage anything or pick anything up issues. It didn't have these freaky enemies that are under the world. And as I say this, I am slowly sinking through the ground. Okay. So, I would have to imagine that if we slowly gave the same feedback to O3 Pro that we gave to O3, that it would, over time, be able to fix those issues. But each time, it would take 15 minutes to reason through, sort of deterministically, as we saw, whether it's making a whole project or just fixing a single file, it reasons for about 15 minutes. So, after this first test, we are still not able to answer that question of where do you want to use O3 Pro. Not for a single HTML file, simple coding problem, not for building a whole project, cold start. One of the best areas of success for O3 Pro from our last video was sort of business reasoning and analysis. We saw a lot of promise there. And so maybe we can switch over to our business reasoning test, and maybe we'll see a little bit more value from O3 Pro over O3.
Yeah, let's find out. Okay, so for our next test, we're doing business reasoning. We figured we'd be a little topical and use the sort of investment from Meta into Scale AI to ask O3 Pro to reason through what this could mean, what are the strategies, how could Scale AI, or specifically their CEO, be used at the company now that he's joining them. To help ground it a bit, we gave it some text. We have llama benchmarks generated from a different query to O3. We have a Dwarkish interview with Mark Zuckerberg that came out recently, so a long-form podcast interview. We have the LlamaCon keynote. Both of these were transcribed using Gemini Pro. And then we have Meta's last 2 quarterly earnings reports. And finally, Scale AI's Series C deck, as well as a report from a third-party firm analyzing Scale AI and their role in the marketplace. So hoping to give it that, as well as some links to the CEO's GitHub, their YC page, the About page for Scale AI. Trying to run with that idea that O3 Pro craves context. So let's jam a bunch of context in there and see what we get.
We're also going to make sure that we include the tooling for Search the Web. It should still be able to call some tools, but we're explicitly going to make sure that for both O3 Pro, and we'll also run this same thing on O3, that we include the web search tool, just in case if there's any gaps, it can be encouraged to go search. So we'll send that off for O3 Pro, and then while it is going to be thinking, we'll kick it off for O3 and compare the two. So we took a quick read through just so we can kind of pick out important points. So first of all, the charts, they've labeled at the top. First one is about their projected labeled data capacity. So obviously Scale AI is in the business of helping to do kind of like labeling data. So acquiring something that helps you label data will obviously increase the amount of data you can label. Fairly obvious, it projects that they will have a much higher throughput in terms of petabytes per month. And it uses this reasoning later. Like it's basically making this chart to help illustrate the point it's trying to make. So not bad. It also has a chart to show projected LLM benchmarks. So it starts in 2024 and 2025. So this is like current MMLU, and tries to project out saying Meta is lagging behind unless they acquire something. Like if they acquire Scale AI, the assumption is they're going to go catch up to OpenAI. Now, that seems a little bit dubious.
Yeah.
Bold assumption, but it at least tries to illustrate their point that Meta is lagging behind. Google DeepMind's doing a bit better. OpenAI is the benchmark. And if they actually increase, the amount of data they have, that could improve their performance. Not necessarily going to be like, hey, that's a great assumption. It's more a case of, hey, at least it tried to visualize what it's going to talk about. So Not necessarily a bad chart. Gives a good exec summary here. Meta's partial acquisition of Scale AI is strategic data and talent land grab that could tenfold its labeled data fire hose. It does a great job at kind of highlighting some of the important points that we'll show you about like how can it manage antitrust and customer churn. Frankly, this analysis was quite good. It pulled out a lot of great points. So first of all, the thing we tried to highlight or wanted it to index on was why would it move on Scale AI? It picked out some immediate catalysts and gave some evidence and rationale, which great table.
You have this bottleneck on publicly available data. It pulled that actually from the Dorkish interview, and you can see that little call out icon, that it's little file icon. It sees the opportunity to take advantage of the lock-in that Microsoft and Google have with using Scale. And it also did a background dive into Alexander Wang, the founder of Scale. It also noted, I thought this was really useful, it noted the regulatory sort of jujitsu they were playing here. So they didn't fully acquire Scale AI. That would trigger regulatory overview. By having a barely minority 49% stake in the company, it does not trigger the same types of reviews. Not a lawyer, but that's what I've read and understood. And so that was good to call out as part of the strategic way of how it operated. And then as we get into the unique assets, you start to see, okay, they're really making a data play. They also get access to government. It cited a DoD contract that exists under the name ThunderForge. And it is really sort of making this case that having a better feedback mechanism for the models is going to increase the rate at which they can improve them. It's a bit of an assumption, but it is logical, and so I think that's really interesting. It also sort of shores up Meta's role. But now we get some interesting, I think there's some errors here.
As we get into the more strategic scenarios, this is where we're trying to push it to give some kind of novel reasoning. So the first scenario is aggressive, and love the way it kind of states assumptions. It says, if we assume antitrust Scale keeps 80% of its clients, and Meta executes its basically data center expansion, CapEx plan, then these things happen, which is fantastic. It's calling out the really aggressive assumptions and then saying like this would be fantastic. There'd be a revenue upside. Here's where they used the chart previously, right? Like it's 5 petabytes and we'll go up to 30 petabytes. See the first chart linked. They're saying there are risks. These are like aggressive assumptions. And then it says another positioning, which is the base case. Now it's making a more kind of reasonable assumption that there will be some churn when they acquire the company. Certain customers will fly out of Scale.
And interesting to sort of look back and see, we've been doing the business reasoning tests for a while, and the models are getting much better at being opinionated, telling a coherent story, pulling from evidence. I will note for the audience that we had a much, much better result by including the web search tool. When we just gave it our pure grounding data, the results were much less impressive. So if you're going to do a similar test on your own, definitely have that web search tool in there so it can get the latest context for what you're talking about. That really moves the needle for us.
It's still done a great job of using the files that we provided it. but I think it just was able to supplement some of its understanding with web search. This is O3, not O3 Pro, but already O3 was doing a pretty excellent job and probably not taking as long.
I think it's actually a great result. It helped me sort of frame what this acquisition's about, framing it as that now they have moved on to the data fight rather than the GPU fight, and the advantages it gives you there. I didn't know about their DoD contract, so that was useful information. I feel like I'm getting an executive summary. I'm not an executive at a company, but having read some executive summaries, it's doing much better at having you, okay, here's the 2 or 3 points you should walk away with and keep in your head. So pretty great result. I am expecting O3 Pro to be much better, but given the coding test, we'll see. It might not be. And how long did it reason for this one? Did we have a reasoning time here?
Yeah, this thought for 1 minute, 12 seconds. So pretty high
really
quality
quick.
result, just thinking for 1 minute. We'll see if O3 Pro is done. Awesome. So O3 Pro came back. It did think for 13 minutes. So O3 Pro's come back. It did reason for 13 minutes. Again, we'll have a quick look through the charts, information, and we'll come back to you. Okay. So we just had a quick look. First of all, I'll just highlight that, again, when we see the kind of details, it's not as extensive in terms of showing its reasoning tokens as O3 was. Like, we could see that it was pulling in different tools and so on when we just quickly showed scrolling down the reason for 1 minute. So very strange that it doesn't show that. But we can see with references, it's clearly gone in some web search stuff. First chart is used kind of at the second half of the report where it says, again, how much high quality training data will be available to Llama models. So that was the only chart, and clearly saying with Scale AI, it's projecting it'll be more.
But
Pretty
interesting
similar
that
to
it limited the chart, right? Like the other one had OpenAI and Google on there. Now it's just purely here's Meta with Scale.
Yeah, and I mean this is just training data. It doesn't give a suggestion that this will translate into MMLU gains or whatever. So interesting, it only did one chart, even though it thought for longer. It does quite a long TLDR. Subjective, but I don't necessarily like it as much. It does kind of highlight these different A and B scenarios, but doesn't really flesh it out in the report. It tried to pull out some other interesting pieces of information, but again, subjectively, I don't know whether it's any better or not. So we'll continue scrolling through. It picked up the same points for why they're acquiring Scale AI, about data scarcity and basically public information is dwindling. It pulled out the same important point from the Dawkins interview where Mark Zuckerberg warned of publicly available data is running out. Trying to get competition, calling the importance of DoD work, pulling the importance of scales number of employees and the Gen AI data engine. Does the same thing of trying to pull out the unique assets. Again, just kind of rewording what we had there, calling out the contracts. And again, good sources here that you can immediately see. Even did a Wikipedia. How Meta is likely to leverage Scale. Again, same kind of thing, just integrate it into Meta, pull out the safety and eval. It pulled out the enterprise importance. Leadership, this was different. It actually called out a Verge report where Alexander Wang will probably lead a data systems group under Meta's AI infra. So that seemed different. I didn't see anything about it saying, they're leveraging the CEO in this way specifically. So first, scenario analysis. This is what I guess it's done the scenario A and B like this, but it's got the assumptions and stuff like that. It's not necessarily, again, this is subjective, but I preferred how through kind of lined out, these are the aggressive assumptions, and then this is what follows. It has done that here, but in a table form. I don't know why I just don't like it as much.
Well, I think there's also a customer satisfaction angle here where I waited for 13 minutes for this, right?
Yeah.
And I'm getting way less detail, way less nuance. I'm expecting a huge analysis that I can really dig into. It's going to take me a while to read. And what I'm getting is truncated relative to O3. And O3 did it in a minute and some change.
This is, nearly the end. You just got a few more paragraphs. And even here with assumptions, right? It's I loved how it called out, regulatory scrutiny is a massive assumption, or competitors not churning. It's kind of said that, but just differently. Meta retains Scale's customers and it invests in headcount and it's exposed as a paid API. Key risk, it does then say antitrust and stuff like that. But just the way it's laid out doesn't give me as much confidence, right? I see this and I'm okay. Whereas the previous one was wow, that's a great summary. And again, to Chris's point, I was at least expecting something better. Right, maybe it's because we looked at O3 first, then we come to here and we're it's hard because this is an analysis. We can't really go back and verify it's way better. It talks about the competitive position versus OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google DeepMind. So it's done a good job trying to pull out hey, they are competing against these kind of combinations and where they match. So they're obviously figuring out like some competitors are going to leave, like leave scale sort of thing. It references the chart that it made, and then it made some kind of conclusion at the end. So it does still call out that the frontier race is shifting from compute to data limited. That's why getting scale AI makes sense. The most probable trajectory blends the two. Very similar conclusion to O3. It's done a great job pulling up evidence of some of its assumptions, but then at the end it's like, hey, Meta might be ahead of OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google DeepMind. Again, kind of good, like not necessarily wrong, but like a little bit dubious to jump to such a conclusion. Whereas by contrast, O3 was like, here's a snappy ending sort of thing, whereas this is very much like a...
Yeah, this has the taste of something that the company itself would put out, right? It's very optimistic on its efforts, and I think what I would be expecting as a user is a third-party sort of very cold analysis, objective analysis on what's happening. I still am harping on the fact that this is a less thorough analysis than the one that O3 came back in a minute. And just to wait 13 minutes, I am expecting something that is at the level of an investor report I'd get from Goldman Sachs. Like, that's the bar I would have here. And this isn't it. This is a blog post, right?
Yeah. Like, I think my thing is just, this is like a side grade to O3, not an upgrade. So I don't know whether I'd want to wait 13 minutes. Same with coding. Get a response back and then iterate with the model. It's much easier for me to verify fast than wait 15 minutes. I'm happy to wait for 15 minutes if I then get, to your point, a Goldman Sachs quality like investors report, but happily go get a coffee and wait. But every time we've run these, it just really seems like a side grade. Like, we're not really seeing any gains for thinking a long time. So again, maybe it needs more context. We tried to give it a good bearing here of like quite a few, like these are all like quite large PDFs. It had web search, so at least it can sync all this together.
I think the interesting part is OpenAI has a product where the wait's worth it, right? Deep research is an example of like when you'd expect the wait to be worth it. So deep research takes usually less than 13 minutes, but it can go longer, but 5-10 minutes, and you get a really thorough backed report. And so I'm just not sure what brings me to the place of paying for O3 Pro. Or even going to O3 Pro. So if I wanted a big business analysis, I'm going to deep research. If I want coding, I'm going to Codex. So this feels like a model without a home to me. O3 would probably be my base assumption for any reasoning task before I branch off to Codex or deep research. And deep research is still O3, so it's kind of all the same. But O3 Pro, I'm just not sure what the home is here. Maybe if I was doing physics, or maybe if I'm deep in mathematics and I can give it the right framing and tools to just think for a long time, I could get a lot of value, but we just have not been able to find it on the channel, I think is the conclusion.
Yeah, maybe it would be better if they had a research preview tag still. Like, maybe they called it out as being research preview, but, we're just struggling to find that use, as Chris said. Not saying this is actually worse than O3, but it doesn't seem to have significant gains, at least from the tests that we've done, which is a little bit disappointing. Not worth it in like our case, where we'd much rather iterate multiple times than wait for one maybe incrementally better request.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have business reasoning and coding in the books, O3 versus O3 Pro. Leave a comment down below if there's a test you found where there's really a great difference being shown. We'd be happy to revisit it if there's an avenue folks are finding success in. But like and subscribe if you like the content. We got a lot more tests coming up soon. And it's never a quiet summer when it comes to AI, so we're expecting lots of excitement in the near term here.
Thanks so much.